talk a bit more about what's in line for next in line for modular digital experiences as businesses move away from monoliths and headless. A new form of composable digital experience emerges. So let's see what is the future of that. Take it away.
Thank you. Let me do the same trick here to see if I can get this working. How's everybody doing, by the way? Having a good evening? Have some nice drinks, nice location, so that's very good. Yeah, quite a mouthful, right? Composable DXP, next in line for modular digital experiences. So really what I would like to do today is to take you to what is a composable DXP? What do we mean by that? There's a few competitors out there that are already coining this definition, composable DXP. Storyblock not being one of them, by the way. Content Stack is, they've already coined composable DXP. But today I'd really like to unpack what we mean by being composable DXP. What is it? Like, why are we creating something and then moving into something that we call composable DXP? What are some of the trends that are influencing this? What are some of the things that I've experienced firsthand that allow you to say this makes sense, that you're going to move in something more as a digital experience platform? And I'd also like to highlight a few use cases today together with the group to see like, hey, this would be an ideal use case for a digital experience platform, and I'm going to tell you why. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Maarten Dings. I'm a senior solution engineer with Contentful. Been with Contentful for almost 3 years. I was just telling some of the people here that I met when I was working here this afternoon. When I first started working at Contentful almost 3 years back, we were doing regular QBRs, meaning you just check in occasionally with people to see how the business is going, to see what you can do otherwise, to see how you can improve. And my first QBR was actually here in this exact office at Lab Digital, because we were selecting partners there. So that was back in the days when I didn't even know any of the people of Contentful. So can you imagine walking into an office and you're wondering like, is this person from Contentful? Is that person from Contentful? I didn't know, so I just said hi to everybody, and that worked brilliantly. But it was fun to be back again after almost 3 years in this exact same office, and I really love what it has become. Right, it has changed a lot over the past years, and I really like it. So I really enjoyed working over here for a couple of hours. Let me give you a quick glimpse into my own journey with Composable. Ever since I left school, I wanted to build an e-commerce store. Like, I want to build the next ball.com. I want to build Coolblue. Obviously, I didn't build it, otherwise I wouldn't be standing here. But I was always exploring capabilities. Like, what can I do to really, to build something that can... For me, it wasn't necessarily about making money. It was more about building stuff and finding new ways to create something. And for me, it's almost magical that if you write code, that something comes to life on the screen and you can actually interact with it. Like, that whole process, for me, it's like a magical experience almost. So I always wanted to build an e-commerce store, but there was a few things that I really wanted to put a checkbox behind. Obviously, I want to use the latest tools, the frameworks and the languages, like basically everything that I already knew and love. I don't want to purchase some tool and then get a login into some .NET language that I don't know of, because that will already set me behind. I want to leverage what I already know and then build on these kind of things. They should be plug and play. If there's immersion tech, if there's like new capabilities that are unfolded, I want to be able to take them into account. Maybe the best example of that is artificial intelligence, right? Imagine that you're stuck in a monolith now and you see all of these cool new vendors incorporating artificial intelligence, and you're logged in a monolith and you're like constantly putting like pressure on the salespeople saying, when are you going to release artificial intelligence capabilities in your monolith? And they will say, yeah, we'll put it on the backlog. It's going to be there. Like, give it 3 months or 4 months or maybe even a year. That's how it goes. I didn't want that. I wanted to just start small, iterate, and expand. And maybe if you guess it from the speech, like a monolith for me was just not an option, right? And for me, this was all about, like, I draw the analogy between, having a monolith and then being a shepherd who needs to maintain a flock. So imagine you buy a monolith, you get this whole flock of sheep, and then it's up to you to kind of make sure that they stay in control, right? So some of the sheep, they will break out, they will go their own direction. Before you can actually manage that whole flock, you need to train dogs. So there is a lot of upfront investment you need to make because the dogs, they need to understand what they need to do. And then if you want to change the direction of the monolith, if you want to change the direction of this flock, you actually need to make sure that everybody's communicating to each other, that everybody is aligned, everybody understands the same purpose that you want to fulfill with your monolith, right? And for me, this is typically a monolith, right? This is this huge flock, and you've got the shepherd that's thinking like, holy crap, how am I ever going to control this group of animals that otherwise are just going to break loose and run loose and just create havoc upon us? And really, like, starting small and iterating on that is like starting with like a single animal, right? You have one animal that's very easy to control. You can put it on a leash even if you want to do it. But you can gradually add some more sheep to your flock, and you can kind of build on top of that and better understand the direction to where this is going. And you can basically control it and also understand that the parameters that define the success of this flock are under control. So for me, that's the best analogy. Whenever I talk to customers and they say like, why should I go with a monolith? I say, are you into animal farming? And they were like, what? And I draw this an analogy, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Let's start small, iterate, and expand from there. All right, so for the people who don't know Contentful, I guess all of you kind of know Contentful already a little bit. If not, this is the gist of it. Contentful was created back in 2013. Oldest headless vendors, by the way. We were solving the multi-channel publication problem where content is decoupled from presentation layer. Quite a mouthful again, basically meaning like, hey, if you have content for a website and you want to reuse that, for example, on your mobile app, you don't want to markup for your website because that's useless in a mobile app, right? Basically, kind of got into an acceleration whenever the iPads and the iPhones launched, etc. So that was really the time when headless propelled, and we had a lot of success with this headless solution. But we can honestly say that we invented the headless category. As a matter of fact, I dare to say that we actually invented the term headless. So if somebody's gonna come up to you and ask like, hey, where is this term headless come from? You can say, talk to the guys from Contentful because they actually invented this term. It's a true story. I recently learned, we did our company kickoff back in February in Berlin, that if you put all of the traffic that's going through Contentful together, that we have like a top 5 global site in terms of all the traffic, right? So you have Google, maybe top 1, then you might have Amazon or something like that in the second place. But right underneath there, on I think position 4, is Contentful and the traffic for all the websites that it serves. So that's quite something. We're Berlin-based. We've got cross-globe offices. Our HQ is in Berlin. If you ever happen to be in Berlin, pay us a visit. We've got a super nice office as well. You're always welcome. And as a fun fact, we started as storage room. Right, so it was storage room when Paulo and Sasha created Contentful, and then I thought that's not maybe the best name to commercialize on, so let's rename it into Contentful. And there you have it. We've actually entered the Composable Digital Experience Platform category. There, it's out there. We just did that, by the way. We haven't officially announced it yet. We will do that, but you can be the first people to actually officially know that we're entering the Composable Digital Experience Platform category. But why? I think that's a very good, that's very good to unpack. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we going into this category? Why are we not sticking with headless, right? We're pretty successful, I can say, in this category. So why are we moving here? Right? We see these objections whenever we talk to people, and I think you did in your talk, Paul, you also mentioned some of these objections that we very often see with the customers that we work with. Some of the feedback that we get from the customers is like, hey, like if we have multiple microservices, if we have multiple best-of-breed solutions, what's the single source of truth? Like, where do we put in like a middleware layer or an orchestration layer? It can be really difficult to maintain. It can be really, like, it becomes spaghetti code or spaghetti infrastructure, if you will, which is really difficult to maintain. And then also, who do I have to license with, right? If a customer comes to us and talks to us as Contentful, and they also want to plug in, for example, Algolia or Commerce Tools or some personalization engine. They're like, okay, so now I have not 1 license, but I have 5 licenses. So if something breaks down, who do I talk to? Like, who's my point of contact? sure, we've solved this, right? This is not like the biggest of issues, but still, this is happening out there. This is what customers lie awake from, because they're thinking to themselves like, hey, I used to just do business with one partner, but now I have multiple vendors that I need to, set up negotiations with and sign contracts with. And that's why I'm very happy that I can see all of the accelerators that are being put out of there, because they're solving this, right? Like Evolve is actually solving these kind of problems, which is really good to see. Really happy about that. And then the last objection is very often like, this is so IT first, right? I want to change something. I need to talk to my IT department before I can actually change like functionality. Right? I want to just maybe put a different color on the website. Why do I need to talk to a developer? They don't know stuff about colors. They don't know things about bytes and code, but not about colors per se. Why is that, right? So these are some of the objections that we see very often. Like I alluded to already earlier, we're still pretty successful, I can say, right? This is Anton Koval from Commerce Tools. He did an evaluation of like various of the accelerators out there in the market. And he just like made a short inventory of what kind of solutions he comes across in all of the accelerators. And I'm happy to say that we're still out there on top. So we are present in an additional 18 accelerators out there in the market, making it a total of 34. And you'll see that the next one under us is Content Stack, with only 8 accelerators present at times, and also been added to 4 compared to the last year. So we're pretty successful in this category, right? So maybe that begs the question still, why are you moving into like a digital experience platform? Why is this even happening? Is that really it? I don't know. Let me tell you a fun story. This actually happened, right? So I was sitting in a meeting with a customer, a marketing team from a larger company, and we literally got the question where they asked, can I move the basket from the top right to the left somewhere halfway the page? Now, has anybody ever told you that there is no dumb questions? I was like, this is a dumb question, but no, just kidding. There is obviously no dumb questions, but I was actually flabbergasted a little bit. I was like, this question came to me, and I was sitting back a little bit. I was like, what is going on here? Like, where is this question coming from? Can I move the basket from the top right to the left somewhere half of the page, right? This is where solution engineering skills come into play, because you always know that there is like a question behind the question, and it's our job as solution engineers to really unfold to the core of this question. And essentially this boiled down to them asking like, yeah, you know what? I just want to have full flexibility because I'm so fed up having to talk to my development team every time I just want to create a new release, every time we have some new products that we want to put out there, every time we want to make it such a simple change, I need to go back to my development team. And they will tell me that they're busy, that they have a whole list of backlog items in their Jira software tool that they're using. And, before I know it, my campaign that I want to make this change for is already done and over, and I'm too late. So it's impacting my time to market, right? And that's when I really started thinking, you know what? If I look at my own experiences from the customers that I've been talking to, I truly saw a shift from seeing a lot of developers in the meeting rooms towards more marketeers, CMOs, CDOs being present in that exact same room. And I'm very thankful for this question, by the way, because it really allowed me to have a think about what is actually happening, like what is going on in the world of headless and composable and digital experience platform. Like obviously there is something changing, right? And this is actually what's happening. This is actually what's changing. And there is a shift to marketing decision making, right? This is not entirely new. I will give you that if you walk up to me like after this talk and you'll say like, hey, but this is not new. We've been seeing this like forever. It's true, but it has also changed a little bit. I'm actually surprised that I haven't heard the term artificial intelligence yet today. Is that correct? Did you mention artificial intelligence? There you go. But artificial intelligence is also going to have a huge impact on this, because AI, and I will talk a little bit about that later on, AI will give the marketeers the tools to fully autonomously run their operations without developers. And that's the pressure they can also feel in the back of the neck, where they say like, oh, wait a minute, like there is something going on. If other companies can potentially do that, then I for sure want to be able to do that. So I want to actually claim autonomy here. I want to make sure that whatever I'm creating, that I can do it on my own, that I don't need anybody else to do that. I don't want to have a developer involved to do simple changes. Like things that developers know can be quite complex, very often is super trivial for marketers where they say like, this is an easy change. This is like, if I could code, I could do this in 2 minutes. Why can't you do it in 2 minutes? And we all know that's not the case. That's not how it works. But in the back of the mind of the marketeers, that's how it works. So 82% says that IT slows them down. They want to build a campaign. They want to put out something in the market, and they say, I'm being slowed down by my IT department. CMOs, CDOs, and heads of digital, they lead the discussions nowadays, right? So like I said, when we previously were talking to developers, we're talking more and more to marketeers, even from the C-suite, right? Even chief marketing officers. We're saying like, this is so crucial to my organizations that we can run autonomously, that we can have fast time to market, that we are always in time with whatever campaign that we're building. Like I want to have a say in this whenever we're gonna like select a new solution or work with a new vendor. And like I said, AI and automation further reduces that dev dependency. And again, I will talk a little bit later about that later on. Also, don't want to make this an AI talk. I'm a little bit fed up with all of the AI, by the way. Yeah, and then the second item really is the rise of customer experience as a strategic differentiator. This is newer. Right? So this is saying, okay, so a website is not just a website is an experience. And you want to make sure that your customer, whoever that is, goes to your website and gets that full experience, which is in the hands of the marketeers. They're responsible for the success. So if they don't meet the success, I wouldn't go as far as to say that they're fired, but they will feel the backlash of that if they're not succeeding in this, right? So they will say, if I'm responsible for the customer experience through a website, then I want to have a say in what kind of vendor that we're going to work with or what kind of solution that we're going to work with, right? And then lastly, the CMO's allocation is 25 to 30% budget goes to technology, meaning that if you take that whole bucket of money and you look at where all that money is being spent at, that if you look at the IT infrastructure, that's like almost rivaling to the budget for CMOs, for marketing tools, essentially, right? So that means that they claim independence, they have a say in the whole process, but they also have the money. So you better listen to them. If they want to move the basket from the top right-hand side to the left middle side of a page, you better come up with a good story that allows them to do that, right? We all know it's not a good idea, because if they go and talk to their UXers, they will probably say like, why are you going to put a basket like somewhere halfway the page where nobody's ever going to find it? But in that kind of meeting, you better say like, sure, Mr. or Mrs. Marketeer, we can do that. But let's have a follow-up discussion whether that's a good idea at all or not. But they want to find the tools and where they have the freedom to do that. And this is really also where I want to take you through a case study about Pets Deli. Not sure if you know Pets Deli, but they create natural, high quality food for cats and dogs. And what they actually wanted to do, they wanted to create a unique experience for their customers. So they've been through Black Friday last year, and they put out coupon codes for their customers to benefit from Black Friday deals, right? So what they said is, okay, we have a lot of cool Black Friday deals, so we're going to go out to our socials, we're going to publish coupon codes, and it's up to the customer to claim their discount on our website, right? That went south. A lot of things went wrong, not only in terms of infrastructure, but some people claimed the coupon code double. There was a lot of UX issues, not allowing customers to enter in coupon codes. Some coupon codes got expired, didn't work, like putting a huge strain on their customer services department because they all got out, picking up the telephone and emailing like, hey, I have a coupon code, but it doesn't work. So they really wanted to prevent that. And they said like, can we just make like a different experience that doesn't involve coupon codes at all in the first place? Can't we not just go in and say like, hey, we've got our customer data platform. We've got a lot of profiles from our customers. Can we just go in and personalize the page and just show them the appropriate prices without having to mess around with coupon codes? And they came to that conclusion roughly 8 weeks before Black Friday, right? So you've got 52 weeks in a year, and then 8 weeks before Black Friday, like, we got to find a different approach to do that. So that's when they approached us. I should say they approach Ninetailed. Ninetailed is a personalization engine from Contentful. We recently acquired Ninetailed. I think 2 months back, 3 months back. Yeah, we acquired Ninetailed. But back then it was still a standalone entity. But we've been partnering with Ninetailed from the beginning. They're also Berlin-based. We've got a couple of people from Contentful working at Ninetailed. So it makes sense that we had a really tight partnership with them already. They everything that they created in terms of their accelerators, but also connectors and marketplace integration was already deeply integrated with Contentful, right? So it's not that you have like two fully separate solutions, but they're already tightly coupled. So we're able to create that integration pretty fast. Now imagine that you're Pat's Deli, and you have Contentful as your content management system. You have Google Analytics as your data warehouse, but you also have your customer data in a data warehouse, and you have Shopify as a CDP. And the only thing that you need to do, is integrate a personalization engine before Black Friday, and in between that integration and going live, your marketing team still needs to be able to create like segments of data profiles, build out the pages for that segment, communicate about that, and then actually go live without the issue on Black Friday. And they succeeded. They did that, right? So they came to us 8 weeks before that. I think the actual implementation time, so when they had their hands on actually integrating this, we were 6 weeks before Black Friday. So the first thing that they did was integrate Ninetailed with Contentful and Shopify. This is because this was a composable setup, right? They have a composable setup. They have Shopify. They had Contentful integrated already. So it was pretty easy for them to actually integrate Ninetailed because they were loosely coupled, all of the individual components. They could easily do that. It's just a matter of tying together some APIs, writing some code, and you're good to go, right? Connecting that into Contentful, making sure that an editor can log into Contentful to drive those changes, to create this personalization based on the customer data platform, pulling in products from Shopify, and there you go. One thing I want to say about the slide, by the way, I really liked Evolve, the accelerator. I was told that I can't say accelerator, by the way. Michael, was it you who told me it's not an accelerator? It's like we don't like accelerators. Is that true? Well, I'll accelerate Evolve. I saw you juggling around a little bit with creating that middleware layer and that GraphQL scheme to be able to do that. I probably should say that Contentful can do that for you. Contentful can be a single source of truth, where in the case of commerce tools or Shopify, you can just include a dependency on the entry, and all you have to do is say like, fetch the content for me, right? So whatever you do in Contentful is saying, these are the SKUs that I want to have for an entry. So let's say that an entry is a landing page, and you select a few SKUs by leveraging our app framework that allows you to create a new nice interface into Contentful. Then we have a feature that we call external references that allows to just fetch that data without you as a developer having to write the code. So basically how it works is you create a connection between whatever commerce platform that you're using, and then we as Contentful, we will go in, so if you retrieve the entry from our API, we will go in and fetch the underlying data for you. Works brilliantly. Works also with GraphQL schemes, etc. So it's a one-time setup. You can, if you integrate that, you just call our APIs, and then we'll do the heavy lifting behind the scenes for you. So gone are the days of juggling with middleware or spaghetti code or whatever that is. And I think that's truly shining a light on why we see that a DXP is a good idea, because this complexity we can solve for by giving you, as people who are integrating or building on Contentful, the right tools and the right frameworks to be able to do that. That's just a sidebar. That I was triggered by your presentation, so thanks for that. Allowed me to talk a little bit about our capabilities that sets us apart from the competition out there. But these features are very often overlooked because as a marketeer, you don't go into these details. You don't ask in a conversation as a marketeer, like, can you tell me a little bit more about your GraphQL schemes and how external references work, these kind of things. They're not interested. They just say like, I need products and I want to enrich products with content, external content. I want to use artificial intelligence to automate this and to speed up my production life cycle. Show me how it's done. And then if you go in and say like, yeah, but we have external references, they say like, I don't care. I just want to get results. I don't want to talk about technicalities. But I think this is a good audience to be able to still tell about that. Anyway, back to the case study. So they were able to do that. They integrated Ninetailed within 1 week, which I think in itself is a huge accomplishment to be able to integrate a personalization engine in under 1 week. I think that's huge. But what that allowed them to do is actually go back to the marketing team and say like, okay, marketing team, now it's your turn. We've given you the tools. You've got Contentful, you've got Ninetailed, you've got your customer data. Now go on, create your segments, create your personalized pages for all of the individual data profiles that we have, and get ready for the Black Friday campaign. And guess what? They actually pulled it off. And the end result is a whopping 51% increase in conversion rates compared to last year. This is not even taking into account the overhead costs I needed to make for their service department. Remember that I said like they have a lot of people picking up the telephone because their coupon codes didn't work? None of that. So factor in the cost, the saved cost for this, and I think the output of this result is really huge. And that's really because they had a composable setup, they implemented just another technology in there, and they were able to get to those results really fast. Right? Then this slide where actually Gartner is saying by 2026, a staggering 70% of organizations will be required to embrace composable DXP technology, up from just 50% in 2023. This is huge. Also, if you look at your own potential, right? Your potential for an accelerator like Evolve. An accelerator is kind of like composable DXP if you think about it, right? You just connect all of the dots yourself and you create all the API connections, etc. And you have something that's ready to go for your customer that you can scale out to different customers as well. And this is actually what Gartner is saying. Like 70% of organizations will be required to embrace composable DXP technology. And if it's Gartner who's saying that, that actually means something. So what does this actually mean? This is meaning that the battleground has shifted to DXP. Now, I'll put some numbers on there. For DXP, the total potential in the market is a whopping $11.2 billion, which is huge. I can disclose that we are only serving less than 2% out of this yet. Like hopefully next year, maybe if I'm doing another talk here, I hope to see this number up. But like you can see, this potential for DXPs is like enormous. If you compare that to a niche like composable CMS, this is really a niche market segment. Like this is $750 million. Like if I go back to the previous slide, you see that 11.2 billion versus 750 million. Right? This is one of the reasons why we're entering in this category as well. Not only because it makes sense, not only because the market demands it, but also because there is simply more money to be made in this category. That's what research is saying. I can disclose how much we have currently in this composable CMS niche market, but it's pretty substantial already, right? So we can also see that at some point we're just going to hit the ceiling there, and now we need to reinvent ourselves, which is meaning that okay, we need to do something different, because if you do the same thing over and over again, it will lead to the same results, and at some point the results are going to dry up because simply the market is not big enough. That's why we're shifting our focus into becoming more like a digital experience platform. Then we have Dean Barker. Who knows Dean Barker, by the way, by show of hands? Anybody who, does it ring a bell to somebody, Dean Barker? Who knows Optimizely? Optimizely, okay, a bunch of people know Optimizely. Dean Barker used to be the director, currently it says in his LinkedIn profile, he's the director of strategic engagement at Staffbase. I think he was a director of content at some point at Ninetailed. Sorry, not Ninetailed, at Optimizely, obviously. I used to work at Optimizely before I worked at Contentful, and I can still vividly remember during all of the company kickoffs that Optimizely was setting out to create a vision for their platform that they wanted to create, but they were always a little bit afraid of the headless vendors, right? And as Dean describes it in his LinkedIn post, I actually condensed it a little bit because it was super long. It was like felt almost like a rant. It wasn't, I guess. He says, I'm trying not to be grouchy here, I swear, but it comes across a little bit grouchy. But back then, during that time, I can still remember that he was saying, it's really funny, as a matter of fact, how the headless vendors have created a category for themselves, right? So imagine that you're stripping away some of the features and the functionality, and then you charge extra for that. This is super smart if you think about it. You take your car and then you rip out the steering wheel and then you rip out like the tires and you have only one door and you go to the market and say, hey, this is like the new car. And you know what? You need to pay double for it, right? Isn't that exciting? And that's essentially how he saw that Contentful was operating. So like they're stripping down features and they're asking more for it. So the strategy back then at Optimizely was to bring in capabilities that could compete to headless capabilities, right? I can still remember that they created a solution that allows you to fetch the data from Optimizely headlessly. Now, I don't want to look at their data infrastructure or whatever they have to make it work, but I can imagine that their database consists out of huge blobs of data, and so it must be really difficult to be able to do that. But what he was saying, and I don't disagree, don't get me wrong, I don't disagree. But what he was saying is like, okay, the larger monolith, the traditional CMSs, they saw vendors like Contentful and other headless vendors bring in new capabilities into the market and then sell it under a different narrative and charge more for that, which obviously was a challenge for them because we took away business from Optimizely. We actually took away business. We said, front end, you will find somebody else to build it, and all the data can be managed from in Contentful, and you bring the two together at some point at the implementation layer, and you're good to go. So that was really one side of the medal, one side of the coin there. So those vendors, they were building in capabilities that are typical to headless. Now on the other side, we saw that the headless vendors, like us, but also Content Stack, Storyblock to some extent, Strapi, one of the open source vendors, we started actually building like towards a digital experience platform, right? So I can still remember that as Contentful, we didn't have live preview. Whenever a customer would come to us and say like, okay, so where do I see my website? Like, I don't know. You go to your staging environment and then you connect it to your preview API and that's how you preview your website. And that's not a good story to tell marketeers because they are visual people, they're creative people, and they'll be like, no can do. I need to see the impact of the changes that I'm creating. So it made sense for us to actually go in and say, okay, let's create then something that we call live preview. And we've evolved and we've over time added in additional features that made us look like we're a monolith, like a traditional monolith. So hence the title where it says, are we becoming the very full feature DXP we once set out to replace? And I don't agree. I don't think so. I think we're still different, and all of that is because of our underlying architecture, right? So, and this is also where composability comes in. Sure, we'll bring in some of the predefined components as we did with personalization, right? If you want to have personalization with Contentful, we will sell you Ninetailed. We will tell you Ninetailed is very well integrated with Contentful. I see a lot of people staring at the screen like, oh, there are so many things to see on the screen. Don't be distracted by this screen. This is just an overview of how we're basically componentizing our own infrastructure, right? This is just saying, hey, if you zoom into the underlying architecture of a Sitecore or an Optimizely or an experience manager from Adobe, you will fundamentally find a different setup, which allows us to be more scalable, efficient, but also be able to swap components in and out, right? So a few months back, I was talking to a customer and they said like, okay, we have Contentful, we like personalization, we have a vendor X in place that does that for us. You have Ninetailed, we don't want to use Ninetailed. Like, okay, yeah, that's a pity for us, but if you come up with good arguments, there is no reason for us to not sell you Ninetailed. And they were like, okay, so can we stick with our personalization provider and then just build on top what we already have? And that's a huge yes, right? And if you go to, I guess, the traditional DXPs, this is more difficult to achieve, just because of the way that they were integrated. And I'm not sure how many of you have built on Monolith or a traditional digital experience platform, but if you change somewhere on the left-hand side of your ecosystem, then on the right-hand side something falls over. That's essentially how it works, because they're so tightly coupled. And because of our architecture being API first by nature, I was just telling somebody that everything you see in Contentful consumes our own APIs. So the interface that you log into is actually consuming our APIs. Whenever we create something new, we will first create the API and then build a shell around that, which I think, and I can't be 100% confident about it, but I think there's a fundamental difference in underlying architecture to the way that it's built up. It's still composable, but still also very opinionated in terms of how do we bring the components together? How do we make sure that you still get the best of breed, but also the best practices that we see out there in the market? So can every vendor play the universal CMS card? Not sure if who knows what universal CMS means. One person, okay. Universal CMS, I think, was coined by Andre Kumar from Uniform, if I'm not mistaken, but might be wrong here. And he actually said, like, the universal CMS is this trend that Dean Barker was alluding to, where like the various vendors that you have in the, let's call them left-hand side spectrum and right-hand side spectrum, are basically coming together and going to be on a collision course where they solve each other's flaws, right? So you've got the user friendliness from your traditional digital experience platform. You've got your flexibility from your headless CMS. You've got the ease of use from your composable setup. So marrying all of these things together creates this new CMS called the universal CMS, where all of the gaps that existed in either of the platforms are filled because all of the vendors have been like looking at each other and building out this feature, eventually leading to a universal CMS. Yeah, I just wanted to put a small pun in there. Just don't use the things you don't need, LOL, because that's very often what we see. If you buy a suite and you say, but hey, I don't need marketing automation. Don't worry, you just don't use it. Like, but I pay you for it, right? Yeah, but you don't use it. Oh, okay. So that's a small pun, but should have been there, I guess. No worries. So this is already an early report from Gartner 2021. Coming back to the same topic, conclusion, if you will. Just going to read it out loud. They say, application leaders cannot meet market needs or business objectives with monolithic digital experience platforms and must obey tech stacks, decompose monolith, and deliver task-oriented capabilities. To future-proof the stack, and composable DXP must be used to deliver composable user experience. Again, this is already 2021, kind of reiterating that same story, right? We need to break everything down in microservices and individual components, and from there look at the basically the responsibility for every microservice, for every task, and then reassemble everything into something that makes sense for the customer, into something that is a solution for the customer, and that allows them to, just have all of the capabilities that he needs to have. And then looking at the recent developments and the recent introduction of artificial intelligence, like this is the wedge to further disrupt this market, right? AI is going to disrupt a lot of markets, but also the digital experience platform market. And I'm going to quote Sam Altman here, who is the CEO of OpenAI, who says that 95% of what marketers use agencies, strategists, and creative professionals for today will easily, near instantly, and almost at no cost be handled by the AI. So think, and I promised in the beginning of the presentation that I said, like, I'm going to come back to this topic a little bit more. A lot of people think that if you're talking about AI and content management systems, that's about producing content, right? You go in and you say, okay, I want to write a blog article about a new car, and then the AI goes in, creates that blog article, and that will create that content for you. And to some extent, it's true, right? If you look at what artificial intelligence can produce for you, this is not necessarily only about content production, but this is about content management again, right? So this is not anymore about editors who go in and who create a blog post and maybe face a blank page problem where they don't know where to start. This can be easily overcome. But if there is a tsunami of content, this is all about making sure that you can manage content in the right way, that it's still on brand, that it's still quality content, that it's still relevant, that you can still decide to where this content should be published, right? Maybe in different regions you want to have different nuances, different content. So that's definitely part one. But another part is that artificial intelligence can automate things, right? Can set up workflows for you, can help you do a lot of the tasks that requires manual labor do automatically, because it can repeat itself. It can learn from you. So there is two aspects of it. It's not just the content production. It's also about being able to automate stuff and learn from users and to replicate that, right? And that's probably also a huge part of this. Another chart is saying that the next growth wave is billions flowing into AI native solutions. Now, if you go back and compare that to the previous chart where we said like, okay, the DXP market is already huge, put an accelerator on top of that, which is AI, and then you suddenly have a market which has a potential of $30+ billion, right? Just because you're combining the two, just because you're making more people come to the platform, supercharging that with artificial intelligence. This is like a huge underserved market, and there's a huge potential in this market for us to come in the upcoming times. Lastly, I want to leave you with another use case. I'm not sure if you've heard this before, but Klarna is doing this already. Klarna is a long-time Contentful customer, and they've been doing this to produce a lot of content. They've been doing that to personalize, to use AI to personalize a lot of content that they put out in their regions. So they've identified that one size does not fit all in terms of personalized content, and they've used artificial intelligence to create different content for different segments inside the different regions that they operate in, right? And they can do this in a fraction of a cost that it would cost them if they would work with translation agencies, with local influencers, all these kind of people. So they kind of got rid of those external people and just had AI come in and do the same thing for them. On top of that, they also automated their customer service department. They brought in some more self-service capabilities in their customer service department, basically allowing customers to come in and then with the content that they have in their platform, allow customers to get to their answer autonomously without having to involve somebody in the customer department. And they're saying that they're saving like millions, what did it say? 10 million per quarter from AI investment. That's huge if you think about it. 10 million per quarter just by using artificial intelligence and to come to cost savings. That's super huge. Only to stress that the impact of AI, I think we've just seen like the tiniest bit of it, like the tip of the iceberg, and what it can do for your content operations as well. And that's it for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maarten, for the lovely presentation and the lovely insights of how you guys perceive the DXPs and the future of it. What questions might we have from the audience?
Yeah, just a question about the feature that you mentioned of the external data sources that you can use to pull in different data into your GraphQL endpoint. Is that like a particular feature of more like your DXP proposition, or is that a normal Contentful feature?
Both. We see Contentful evolving into a digital experience platform. And one of the promises is that we're solving the single source of truth problem, where editors are like, okay, where do I log in? Where do I change my data? And where do I make sure that whenever I create a page, that I have just one dashboard essentially that I need to operate on. That's just one side of the coin, because as a marketeer, it's lovely if you can do that. But as a developer, you still need to pull together all of these individual data sources. So yeah, it's a strategy of Contentful to really say like, hey, we can connect all of that for you also as a developer. So yeah, it's a feature of Contentful's digital experience platform offerings, allowing you to just set up the connections, and then we'll go in and fetch all of the underlying data whenever you call our API. So as a developer, you just call out to, you fetch one API endpoint, and you retrieve all of the data back that's connected to that particular entry for Contentful. Yeah. So Contentful DXP feature, yes. Yeah.
One more question about the combination of Ninetailed and Contentful.
Mhm.
Do you still are you logging into two systems as a user, or are you like more integrating it as a whole?
No,
one day.
that's also one of the upsides of being composable. Ninetailed was already tightly integrated into Contentful because of our our app framework, which allows third parties to build on top of Contentful, whether that's a plugin or a takeover on a specific position inside Contentful. But Ninetailed had done that already pretty thoroughly. So that means that if you, as an editor, if you're personalizing something in Contentful, you don't at all need to go to the Ninetailed dashboard. You just go into Contentful, and you control everything from within Contentful, whether that's your audiences, whether that's setting up your experiences, defining what kind of personalization or experimentation you want to run inside Contentful. Everything is handled in one and the same interface, which is Contentful's, but the data is still being sent off to like a different underlying database. So in that sense, it's still decoupled. So there is still like a separation between logic and also infrastructure. But for an editor logging in, it just feels like it's one single seamless system in the end. So yeah, single experience for them. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the question is about building a DXP, which you might want to build consisting of all kinds of different parts. Maybe even working with different CMSs than Contentful. Would it make sense at some point to replace the CMS functionality of Contentful with something different? Or, for example, we have clients that have multiple CMSs that you want them to use the DXP, but maybe not the CMS capability of Contentful. So could you replace that if you would want it? That's a question.
Yes, the answer is yes. And that's also happening very often, where we see that customers are coming off a legacy system or maybe some that they want to replace. Drupal, Sidecore, AEM are some of the solutions that we see that are very often being replaced. But they say we don't want to rip and replace anything. We just want to keep the content that's in there, but also adopt a new system, a new way of working, profit or take advantage of the new features that you have as Contentful, but we still want to keep some of the content at different CMSs. Is that possible? Is that the question? And our answer to that is yes, you can still do that. And again, this is because of our interoperability. We've got a lot of methods and frameworks to connect in and out of Contentful. So yeah, that would definitely be possible to do that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Following your example of the Black Friday, I was wondering if there is any visual presence of what actually was the difference between the code and what you actually implemented.
How do you mean visual difference of what?
Like how the end user will see the promotion for Black Friday.
You mean the personalized experience that they have?
How would that look like? Yeah.
I'm not. I think the case study is online. I'm not sure if it shows exactly what you want to see. Yeah, but imagine something like they have a CDP where they keep track of orders, so they can easily segment audiences based on that criteria. As an example, maybe they have customers that order very often at Pets Deli. So they have returning customers that they want to reward with a higher discount. That's the kind of things that they were doing, where they said like, okay, if you're returning customer,
Right. So they set like certain rules of who is going to see the discount appear in their account.
So what they did is, so it's not dynamic pricing or anything, right? So what they actually did, and that's also one of the advantages of being composable. What they did is they created an audience, and then they said like, hey, we've got different product sliders with different prices, essentially saying like, hey, these are These are prices from Shopify for specific products that are appearing into different product sliders. And those product sliders or product overviews or PLPs or whatever you want to call them, these were then attached to an audience. And those were presented to that specific audience based on a personalization match coming from Ninetilt. So meaning if you're a frequent visitor and you spend a lot of money with them, your discount is higher just because you see a different set of products with prices coming from Shopify.
Right. Awesome. Thank you.
No more questions? One more brave soul? No. Well, let's give Maarten a round of applause. And thank you all for being a wonderful audience tonight, spending this Wednesday evening with us in our beautiful office and attending this joint co-hosting of Lab Digital together with the Composable Web Architecture community. And until the next event, thank you for being here, and now please enjoy some more drinks and some more snacks.